Great. I'm seeing the first few people trickle in. So let's get started. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Unfiltered AI Leadership. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Farzana Rahman. She's a former NHS radiologist and entrepreneur, CEO and co-founder of Hexarad, one of the UK's fastest growing teleradiology companies. Like I've always mentioned, like one of my favorite parts of my job is getting to sit on this sofa and just chat to my friends. So Farzana, thank you so much for making the time. You've had a super interesting journey, particularly in the UK context. But can I start before Hexarad and tell me what first drew you to medicine and why did you end up doing radiology?
Medicine was, kind of didn't know what I wanted to do. I was quite good at science. I liked problem solving. My parents aren't doctors or anything. Um, and I had a few friends applying for medicine, if I'm
Yeah.
honest, and it sounded like it was worth a
Oh,
punt.
that's how late you were thinking about this,
Yeah, yeah,
as in
yeah,
around uni application time.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. So
That's
just
great.
really like
Yeah.
organized. And I went to medical school. I was quite shocked actually by I think the volume of work that came with medical
Okay.
school. I found it quite hard because when I was at school,
Yeah.
uh, everything came quite easily to me. Um, but when I started medical school, I was overwhelmed with how much information I
Yeah.
had to absorb. So, and in the first 2 years of medicine, you do like the kind of preclinical bit,
Yeah.
and it was a bit boring, like Krebs cycle.
Yeah.
Like you're a physicist, you probably love that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
No, but that's chemistry.
It's
Yeah, so I hate
chemistry,
that stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So, so I found it quite dull. And then when we switched to, then I did BSc and then switched to clinical medicine,
yeah. Yeah.
and that's when I really liked medicine.
And what was it in particular that made you like it?
I liked thinking on your feet.
Okay.
I actually liked talking to patients. Every day was a bit different, particularly as a medical student, as a
Yeah.
junior doctor. And I quite like being out of my comfort zone. So when you're a medical student on the wards, you, you walk around the wards and then you just get grilled
Yeah, yeah,
by
yeah.
consultants.
And you
And
enjoy that?
I liked it. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I liked it. I liked having to think on my feet.
Did you do like debate at school or something like that?
Did.
You did? Yeah.
I did. I did,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I liked that and I liked that you weren't just sitting at a
Yeah.
desk.
But so to be in a position to apply for medicine at application time,
Mm.
you would have had to have taken certain A-level subjects. So you already had like an interest or inclination to STEM type stuff?
Yes, yeah, I did. Although I did, when you're young,
Yeah.
I quite liked a bit of everything, but I liked science
Yeah.
and I liked maths.
Yeah.
I didn't do further maths, but I did maths. So yeah, yeah, you're right. I had picked those kinds
Yeah,
of
that's so interesting because I was the opposite.
yeah,
I hated physics in
yeah,
GCSE, and the only reason I picked
yeah,
it was because my older brother said, for better or worse, he was like,
yeah,
you can't get into a good university if you don't do physics and maths. And that's the only reason I picked physics. And then
yeah.
my other subjects were literature, French, and philosophy, which is what I actually liked. And it just happened that I had a great physics teacher at A level. Ended up
That's
doing physics.
now you've built a business based on physics.
Yeah, no, I
So
know. And I'm gonna
you
get.
really should thank your brother.
I know I do every day. Um, the other thing which is interesting, and maybe it's I don't know from when you were in high school, or maybe like those ward rounds. When did you start to feel a pull? Well, I don't know if that's the right way to phrase it,
Mm.
like a pull towards leadership.
Yeah.
Like were you like a sports captain, like in primary school, or was this a later thing, or is it something that was just thrust upon you?
Yeah, like I was not the kind of typical like leadership person in school, like organizing things or
D of E,
be like I
yeah.
did do DV
Okay,
actually.
no, yeah.
Um,
Well, you good at it. I did it, but I was very bad at it.
yeah, I mean I was miserable. I was like completely miserable. But no, it wasn't. I think and I wasn't like mess president or anything. But I
Yeah.
think in retrospect, I probably showed most leadership with organizing like nights out.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah. Social sec.
social, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Uh, and I certainly didn't think about, I want to be a leader.
Yeah.
But probably I always enjoyed working with people, talking to people, quite relatively creative thinker.
Yeah.
And so probably had that. But yeah, I certainly wasn't one of those people who had everything mapped out,
Mm.
knew exactly where I was going to go. I see those people on like social media now and then they're just completely amazing, but that definitely wasn't me.
So when was there a moment when you, or was it Hexarad that was the trigger point where you felt this pull towards leadership?
No, it was when I finished medicine and then I did my 2 years, and then this was the time of MTAS, which was this was back in 2006, and you had to apply for a run through training program as a
Okay.
junior doctor.
What does MTAS stand for?
I can't remember. It was medical something. It was a math of
Okay,
failure.
fine.
It was a
Okay,
really
yeah,
great example of poor execution.
yeah,
We've never seen that before. But anyway, it was the first time that they nationalised junior doctors to go and work. And I didn't know at that point, still in medicine, what I wanted to do. So I
yeah.
applied for surgery,
Ah,
mainly because I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be a GP. I didn't want to do medicine, like,
it's a,
hospital
yeah,
medicine.
yeah,
So I applied for surgery. I quite liked surgeons.
yeah.
And I didn't get a job. And I was
You do give me very surgeon vibe. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, but I didn't get the
yeah,
job in MTAS, and it was the first time
yeah.
that I kind of went for something and I didn't get it,
Oh wow.
and I thought it was like the end of the world. I was 26. I actually thought it was the end of the world. It was completely nonsensical, but that was the first big rejection I had, and it was the best thing that ever happened because after that
How interesting. Yeah.
I then just leaned into what I liked, and I think in the midst of that I like to look at problems in different ways. I like to work with people. It just gave me, I think, the confidence to probably lean into the things I enjoyed, which ended up being leadership.
Fine. And then what was the turning point for you to, you've left clinical practice or you keep a toe in every now and again?
Yeah, I don't work in the NHS, but
But
I am still I still work. I can still be a radiologist.
radiologist,
I'm
you're still a
retired.
registered
Yeah,
radiologist. Yeah. Okay,
exactly.
fine. So what was the turning point, I guess, to change your clinical practice and found Hexarad?
So I had done a few different things before, like I
Yeah.
hadn't founded other
Okay,
companies.
tell me what
Yeah,
happened before?
when I was a registrar, I realised probably like by my second year that I couldn't just imagine only doing a consultant job 9 to 5.
Why was that?
I think it was the more senior you get as a doctor, the less out of your depth you feel,
Oh,
and the
okay.
more routine your job becomes. And I realised that I probably wouldn't ever do well having the same job 9 to 5, doing the same thing. That it's unusual because as a junior doctor, your day is not like that at all. But the more senior you get as a consultant, it is. So I think once I realised that, I did a master's in health economics. I took
Where
time
did
out
you do that?
at the LSE,
Okay.
and then I took some time out. I set up a kind of a primary care project in Bangladesh where my family's from. And then when I became a consultant, I did a job where I did clinical practice for half the week, and half the week I did policy work. So I always knew that I didn't want to just do kind of clinical medicine. And the Hexarad came about because I was working with my co-founders. We were registrars at the time. We had this idea about solving problems. We were naive and like believed we could do
Yeah, yeah,
anything.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and so we started Hexarad. The idea came when we were still registrars.
What year would this have been?
I mean, we thought about it like back in like nearly 10 years ago,
Okay.
where we talked about it and then kind of founded it as we were becoming consultants. It was a side project, and then
Yeah.
it was around kind of just before COVID where I took
Really?
the plunge
Yeah.
and thought, right, we're all gonna just focus on this.
Okay, fantastic. And so tell me a bit more about the specific, I guess, problem that you're trying to solve or that you thought you were solving at the beginning with Hexarad, and has that problem evolved or is it still the same problem?
Yeah, the core problem is still the same,
Yeah.
but the market has evolved and the solutions have evolved. So the problem that we saw this was 10 years ago, was too many scans and not enough radiologists.
Mm.
And that is the problem that we're trying to solve. And it's an important problem to solve because without a report, without a diagnosis, there is no treatment.
Yeah.
And it's really obvious for people in radiology, but it's not super obvious for people outside of radiology. So we knew it was a really important problem to solve. And we set up Hexarad. And this was, when we first had the idea, it was around the time. Do you remember when there was all the hype about big data?
Yeah, yeah.
It's a pre-AI.
Was
Everyone
that
was talking.
before cloud or after cloud? There was like cloud, big data,
I think it went big data, cloud,
and,
yeah, like
and the,
Web3,
yeah, yeah,
AI.
yeah,
But yeah, it was around that time, and people were talking a lot about tech. Radiology is naturally amenable to tech,
yeah.
but we understood that as much as like tech is really important, you couldn't do without the people. So that then led us to create Hexarad to try and solve that problem. And we're still trying to solve that problem,
Yeah.
and we are, I think, successfully solving that problem. But the impact of that problem has, I think, magnified
Yeah.
after COVID. The way to solve the problem is different now because there are other tools that you can use, and we're building that. So certainly the idea, what we're doing now isn't the idea we had 10 years ago,
Yes.
but the problem is the same. Probably similar for you, I would
Yeah, yeah.
imagine.
Yeah, no, definitely. And obviously, that naivety at the beginning, whilst it's helpful to get you started, won't see you the whole way through, right? And you get more sophisticated nuance of your understanding of the problem. You're like, oh, actually, that's not quite what it is. I want to drill down on your perspective on leading a business as a radiologist or with a clinical background. There's obviously the direct link with the subject matter, but that aside, how do you think your clinical background has shaped the way you've led your business? And the reason I ask that is, like, I'm not a medic, but I call myself sort of medic adjacent. My wife's a medic, and I spent my entire career with them. I think it's a fantastic training pathway for leadership in general,
Why do you think that?
because it's a highly multidisciplinary field and you're having to take accountability for decisions you make at a very early age,
Yeah.
where other career tracks you wouldn't. If you're a finance person, you're a software engineer, well, you might be incredibly competent and intelligent, but you're not taking the kind of decisions with the same kind of constraints that a junior doctor overnight has to take.
Yep.
But I don't want to give you the answer, so you tell me what you think.
Yeah, I agree. So I think, how has it shaped leadership? So me and my co-founders, Amy, Jay, and Sam, we are all radiologists by background, have all done other things.
And you all trained together. That was
We all
the
trained
gang.
together.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
we were registrars together. But Sam was he did physics like you, loves physics, and he was a product trader in the city for 10 years. He went back to medicine because he's just a massive overachiever. Amy was an editor at the BMJ, and Jay had like set up like a gazillion different things.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Okay, so everybody was like,
everybody did other things.
yeah.
And so I think, and so we're all very different,
Mm,
but the thing I suppose that we have in common is our values, and how medicine shapes our leadership, I think, is first of all being patient centered.
mm,
So it's very easy for us to understand how what we're doing directly impacts patients. And then that's a really great thing to be able to translate to our team, because it means everything people are doing is adding value to a patient. So certainly that. And I think your point about being able to risk stratify and take risks is a really, really important thing. That is very helpful as a doctor, because you're completely right. I remember when within my first month as a junior doctor, just standing there like in the middle of the night with a super, super sick patient,
mm,
just having to be like, okay, let me just go back to basics. And we have found that even on our most difficult times in Hexarad, we're still like, you know what, at least it's not like when I was an SHO and I was down in A&E and a patient was just bleeding out and and I
yeah,
was just standing there putting pressure on. It does give you perspective, and it does give you the ability to also risk stratify. So
yes.
you can kind of quickly triage how you prioritize decision making. I think that's really important when you're starting a company.
Yeah, the way, like, this reminds me of an incident when I was a trainee scientist at Guy's, and I was just walking back from a lunch break, and a patient had fallen out of a wheelchair,
Mm.
and I was the nearest healthcare professional, and I had no idea what to do, because I'm not a medic and I don't have that training. But and that's a very well, a more trivial scenario. But even like in life-threatening circumstances, you have like a risk stratification protocol, which is like airways, blood, pulse, or whatever, and then you work your way down, right? And then sometimes in business, that's what you're doing every day. Is like, is this going to kill us?
Yes.
And is this going to kill the company? No, it's not. Okay, then let's escalate and then make sure you've got all those risks managed.
And then I think the other
Yeah,
thing is you are really thrown in at the deep end
yeah.
as a junior doctor. So you start, and suddenly I remember starting my first A&E job. I just turned up, and I hadn't done A&E before, and I was on nights, and this was at King's. It was really
Oh
busy.
wow.
Back in the day, there used to be like 3 junior doctors in a row. I feel like that was it.
Yeah.
Like all the consultants there was no consultant like in the
Yeah.
hospital overnight. And I remember just being in A&E, and we had the most amazing like A&E nurses who
Yeah.
pretty much carried me through the night, being like, you need to do this and that.
Yes. Yeah.
And it was really stressful, but that's the other thing, is you are always thrown in at the deep end as a junior doctor.
So here's a slightly philosophical question, which is, did you get through that because of like a innate ability to deal with that kind of pressure and make decisions? And so, as in, is that a filtering process, or do you develop it having gone through the process?
I think it's both.
Okay.
I think it is both. And I think a lot of junior doctors naturally do have that, probably what attracts them to medicine, but you get better at it.
Okay.
You because you make some catastrophic mistakes which have really high consequences, and you'd be a psychopath if it didn't affect you and you didn't have that feedback loop. But I think being able to have like a calm head under pressure and figure out like, okay, what is the immediate priority and what are the next priorities is something that I think a lot of doctors do have.
And so then going back to then the founding of Hexarad, and so you've got sort of the four of you plus Sam, I guess at some point.
Tim.
Oh, sorry, Tim.
Tim,
Tim.
yeah, he's
Sorry.
our
Yeah,
CTO.
Tim's
Model turns
yeah,
CTO,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Sorry. The was it natural that you were going to be the CEO? Was it like everyone's like, oh yeah, of course it's Farzana, or yeah, how did that come about?
Yeah, it's gonna be like, I think it was, yeah, it seemed like that, but maybe the answer would be like, no, she's a psychopath and pushed herself to the front.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, no, I think so. I think we all did the roles that suited us best,
Fine.
and I probably had that kind of big picture vision and that kind of some
Stubbornness.
degree of stubbornness and optimism. I think that's the
Yes.
other thing you need,
Yes.
right? To
Yeah.
be like, yeah, I know,
Unreasonable optimism.
full optimism in the face of continuous rejection.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
And so
I'm really good at rejection. That was
yeah, no, it is a critical skill I've learned. Yes, yeah. And then as CEO, what's been harder than you've expected, and what's come more naturally than you thought it would?
oh gosh, what's harder? So many things. Um, I think one of the things that's hard is it's the fact that your business is continuously moving and growing,
Mm,
and you want to maintain the same output, but you need to figure out how you do that in a different way quite continuously. So what do I mean by that? I think just always having operational excellence and
mm.
maintaining that standard. Um, and what worked 6 months ago won't work in 6 months because the business is completely different. And I think that is hard.
And that's harder than you expected?
Yes, I
Yeah,
think,
yeah.
and yeah, people say that quite a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
How does the company grow? How do the people grow with the company?
Yeah, yeah.
And I think it is really hard.
Yes, yeah. No, I completely agree. And then what's come more naturally? Where you're like, oh, actually, I'm quite good at this. I didn't realize I was going to be good at this. Oh, this is easy.
Oh God, I don't know if anything
Yeah.
feels easy. Um, I think I've got great co-founders.
Okay.
So we,
So
it's
talent spotting.
yeah,
Yeah.
let me
Yeah.
take credit
Yeah.
for them. No,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the fact that it's still fun. So what's unexpected, I guess, it's still
Okay.
really good fun. Like
Yeah.
I still really enjoy sitting around the table with like my co-founders and Tim,
Yeah.
who and just us, having a chat. I think
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
kind of,
Yeah.
I know that sounds like, does that come easily? But I think you would imagine that people say to us all the time that, God, the four co-founders, how did
Yeah.
that work?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not that we don't have disagreements, it's not that we all see the same thing, but that dynamic actually does come quite easily.
Yeah. No. No. It's very. I mean, I
Mm.
think it's like the number one or two reason for startups to die is co-founders falling out.
Yeah.
So it's not like a trivial thing to have a good relationship with the senior leadership.
You don't have any
Yeah,
co-founders.
yeah. So I don't have, yeah, I'm technically a solo founder, which is its own kind of brutality. But having said that, my entire senior leadership team are all people I've worked with before.
Okay.
So like my head of strategy, I was best man at his wedding. We grew up together. Lucy, who's my head of ops, we worked together for 5 years. Devet and I worked together a decade ago. And so, and the reason for that is one, I knew them as highly competent people at what I needed them to do, but also I knew that at the beginning, when you're going from that 0 to 1 stage, you need a lot of trust.
Yeah.
Because, like you say, the CEO can, from an external perspective, look unreasonable in the decisions they're making and the things that they're seeing. And you need people to trust you when you say, like, hey guys, I know that we've had all these rejections, but I'm pretty confident that this is still the way. And that's really hard to build that trust quickly with people you don't know. Yeah. And if you're a solo founder, you have to do that.
Did you get many rejections?
Yeah, I get rejection all the time. I like So yeah, all the time. Oh, I got rejected everywhere in my career. I'm just thinking back. Like I failed my driving test 4 times. When I went for my NIHR PhD application, I got rejected 4 times. Four is like a repeating pattern. When I went to raise VC money, I got rejected more than 4 times.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
a lot more. But like you, I spent like almost a decade thinking about this problem
Mm.
before I set out to do it, and that builds a lot of self-confidence.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
uh, and uh, yeah, and that helps you get through it. And also, I think some of those early rejections and
Mm.
failures in life really set you up for the downstream. I remember, like you, high school came relatively easy to me, and I remember my A-level physics teacher saying just before I was about to sit what was called the panoptic exam, which was like the final module, which covers the entire 2 years of physics. He said, "Harris, I hope you fail." And I was like, "Sir, I thought you liked me." And he goes, "Because I've seen people like you before, and they go to university, and that's when they fail, and they don't know how to handle it."
Yeah. Okay.
I ended up getting full marks in that exam,
Yeah.
but the point
So
was
he
made.
was wrong.
But the point was made,
Yeah.
which is like there is a real character development which is necessary
Yeah.
that comes from those repeated failures.
Yes.
And the real nuance understanding, particularly for senior leaders, is when you should listen to certain kinds of feedback and failures. Because there's some things where people say no and they're wrong,
Mm.
but sometimes they say no and they're right. And the wisdom is being able to tell the difference
Yeah.
between the two, and that's what I found tricky. Um, Coming back to you and radiology in particular. Um, so I sometimes joke that I was born in radiology because I've sort of spent my entire career in the NHS
Been
as a
down
medical physicist.
Spain.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And then I also say that I'm trying to run away from it,
Yeah.
but you're not. You've gone deeper
Yeah.
into radiology operations. Um, what what keeps you excited about radiology as a profession going forward?
I I think it's I think the impact of radiology on patients is like it's so immense. And I think that inherently is exciting. And then from a diagnostics perspective, it's it's really interesting. But yeah, I think for me it's patient impact.
Mm,
It's this idea that if you streamline this, you have so many positive outcomes for patients,
yeah,
and your ability to do net good is really
yeah,
strong. So I think there's first of all that, and second of all, radiology is just interesting because um, it's got so much innovation in the space, right? And so you are just always behind.
yeah,
You're always, you're never fully up to date. Like I was talking to Jay, who leads all of our product and kind of vision stuff, and he went to SIM recently. Did you
oh
go to
yeah,
SIM?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and which is the big radiology kind of tech conference, and he was just like, everything has changed
Yeah,
in the 6 months since RSNA. Like
yeah,
that's how
yeah,
fast we're moving now,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I think that's really exciting.
It is, yeah, yeah,
Mm.
yeah. That was one of the things that specifically drew me to MRI physics, which was my specialty, because I had the opportunity to either work in radiotherapy or in safety or in nuke med, I think. And I was drawn to MRI physics for other reasons, but one of them was that it's just hard. It's very hard, and there's a lot of R&D and innovation in MRI all the time.
Yeah,
And that was the thing that always kept me interested, was like, I don't,
case space.
yeah,
That's all
exactly.
about
Yeah,
MRI
yeah. What's
physics.
case space?
Yeah, I have no idea. I couldn't answer it.
Yeah.
I remember at one point I passed an exam where I had to know what that was.
Speaking about impenetrable topics,
Yes.
AI and radiology,
Yeah.
when did you, well, it's not that important, but when did you first hear about it? But more importantly, was your first reaction skeptical or excited? Or are
Uh,
you one of those people who are like, oh, it's never going to be able to do my job?
no, I don't think so.
Okay.
I was always excited
Yeah.
because I think there is so much potential for like tech, and I think the mistake people make is they think that first iteration is the be all and end all, but that first iteration of any product is just laying the groundwork for everything that's to come.
Mm.
So I always thought it would be really interesting. I think a mixed bag because there was so much hype around radiology. Um, I don't
Why'd you
know.
say it's hype?
Well, I mean, I think back in 2016, for sure, right? There was a VC bubble. A bunch of those companies didn't really end up making much impact. But I think the mistake in then is thinking it didn't work. I think what it did was set the groundwork and set that first set kind of what is possible in the market. So no, I think I was always really interested by it. I think Gen AI has switched everything up. I think
Mm,
that's really interesting.
yeah.
I think it's really, and then I think where you see the innovation is when you go to conferences and you speak to people doing like really cool ass stuff that isn't even yet published, and it gives you an idea of what the possibilities could be.
Yeah. So in that sort of first wave,
Mm,
and we've spoken about that before in
mm,
sort of other episodes, where like there's been a few sort of like darling use cases like stroke AI, some sort of musculoskeletal fracture stuff, and a few other domains that have had decent market penetration. Stroke almost 100% actually
mhm,
in stroke units. Um, but there's been hundreds of
mhm.
products on the market that have not made any progress. What do you think hasn't worked in those scenarios?
Like, do you mean as examples or broadly as why
Just broadly, yeah.
broadly? Yeah, I think healthcare. I always say like healthcare is about solving the problems that are on fire because everything is a problem in healthcare,
Yeah,
and but you've got to solve a problem that is impactful enough that people are going to pay money for it,
yeah,
right? And that's the only way you're going to be able to do it.
yeah,
And I think it's just having the nuance of understanding what those problems are, and sometimes the people who understand those problems are, funnily enough, not people who run VC funds.
yeah.
Stark else to breathe. um, and so what they might think is really cool
Yeah,
and fund isn't really something that the customer is going to buy. And so I think that not being connected to understanding the real problems in healthcare, what's impactful, what decision makers are going to pay for, and really in a broader sense, understanding the actual true market and how you can address that is probably what has led to some of that hype. I think you've got generalists in the kind of investment space who think certain things are cool but don't understand
mm.
um, how you sell into healthcare and what products make an impact. I think that's hopefully changing now, and I think that's why it's now a more exciting time.
I think I
Mm,
broadly agree with the sentiment. The thing that always confused me is, particularly from the founders, so
mm,
separate to the investor community, is the culture with sort of in startup culture has always been about like customer obsession,
mm,
MVP, solve the problem,
mm.
iterate, blah blah blah. And it feels like everyone forgot that memo when it came to building healthcare tools.
Yeah,
There was a complete disconnect with the customer
yeah,
and an obsession with something else.
yeah.
Why did that have? Why has that been the case?
I think it just depends on whether you truly understand healthcare, and I would say this right
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I'm from a healthcare background, but I think if if you don't understand the process of how healthcare works and you haven't got an idea about that, then you make the mistake of having an idea of what people should do as
yeah,
opposed to what they in fact actually do. And I think that's a very easy way to then to kind of then lead your product, right? The way you do it doesn't even make any sense. You should do it this way, but that's a very, very difficult thing to sell.
yeah.
And so I think it has been a lack of understanding. And I do think that's why it is important to have people who are leading the business who do fundamentally understand the messiness of healthcare. Like in the US, I think the majority of hospitals have 2 weeks of financial runway. That is
Wow.
that's under how much pressure that's how much pressure hospitals are under. You
Yeah,
see the same thing in the UK at the moment, right?
yeah,
It is like this continuous pressure where everything is on fire.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And I think it's in that kind of context, wouldn't it be cool if is not really like it doesn't solve the fire.
yeah, yeah. No, no,
Mm,
you're completely right. So coming back to the Hexarad business in particular, so I've been talking to some of your team members, including Jay, and
mm.
what's struck me is that you've been particularly judicious about your AI adoption journey because ultimately you run radiology processes,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Um, so I guess without giving away any sort of insider secrets,
Mm.
how do you think about AI
Yeah.
in use internally to your business, particularly around your radiology processes?
Yeah, so we really drill down into like certainly within the business, like
Mm,
okay, how will this help our customers in a very, very direct way? How will we see the evidence of this in how our customers use us? And then I think more broadly being very, very clear about the problem that we are trying to solve. And what we've come to the conclusion is that boring stuff in AI, we like the boring
Yeah.
stuff, right? We like logistics, we like allocative efficiency, because I think that's where we see impact, because
Yeah.
that's where we know all of the inefficiencies that are there. And for us, we have to demonstrate to our customers, healthcare providers, they're going to get an ROI, they're going to see an actual impact. So by really focusing and drilling down on that, that's helped us to really land that. Our teleradiology business, early on, we understood that we would need to really get to the grips of getting the right scan to the right radiologist at the right time. So we built our own kind of algorithm with AI that does that. It sounds kind of boring, right? Because
Yeah.
well, who cares about it? Like, who cares? Like, what a chest radiologist? Like, people are already asleep. But it's really important, right?
Yeah.
You get the right scan to the right radiologist, you make so many efficiencies. And then when we launched OptiRad, which is our radiology workflow and business intelligence software, again, it's about improving workflow, business intelligence, and logistics. So really just some of the super basic things that we know that if you improve, there will be a really good outcome and you'll develop an ROI for your customer, because you can have the coolest, fanciest tool, but if your rotoring is doesn't work, or if you know your hospital internet isn't very good, or if there's like a gazillion different clicks because your AI tool doesn't really integrate with your RIS and PACS, it just doesn't really actually make an impact.
Yes, yeah, no, I completely agree. It's almost a bit like a Maslow's hierarchy. So you've got to take care of the basic stuff. The other thing as well is that, I mean, and I was sort of victim of this as well. Like when I started my PhD work, it was around pseudoprogression in glioblastoma. So analyzing these MRIs of this very rare disease. That was my first foray into sort of machine learning and AI. And now I do plumbing of AI, like the complete other boring end of the
We're
spectrum.
both really boring people.
Yeah,
Yes.
but ultimately it's like obviously there's incredible value in that kind of research for those rare diseases or those sort of niche clinical outcomes. But like you say, there's like really fundamental issues uh, around interoperability, evaluation, impact, monitoring, all these kinds of bread and butter things that we're not doing properly, process optimization, like the stuff that you've highlighted. And but I think now people have cottoned on to this,
Yeah.
but partly because I think we've become maturer as an ecosystem, and partly because of the financial pressure has forced us post COVID to be like, oh my God, how do we make this more efficient? How do I manage my, I don't know, rationalization of my headcount, et cetera, et cetera? Where now hospitals, and obviously the advent of Gen AI has helped, are now looking at the boring AI use cases because they're actually like, I could see the ROI of this in a month.
Yeah.
Whereas outcome of a rare disease, I might not see in 20 years.
Exactly.
And the house is on fire today. So no, that makes a lot of sense. So one of the acute problems, and this was actually, I guess, the problem that you looked at 10 years ago, which was radiology backlog.
Yes.
Is AI a solution to the radiology backlog problem?
Uh, yeah, but I think that's kind of like asking the question: is technology a
Okay,
solution to
yeah,
radiology, right?
good
Because
challenge.
what does it like? What does that mean? That
Assisting with the diagnostic read,
okay, so you mean the actual image
pixel AI.
interpretation stuff? Yeah, I think
Let's start with
eventually.
that.
Yeah, I think eventually it will be. I think
Why is it not now? There's over 1,000 FDA approved products. Why are they not helping with the backlog today?
I think because the backlog is a couple of things. So
Okay.
I think first of all, why do you have a backlog, right? You have a backlog because you don't have enough radiologists to like read the scans. Now, is it a pure numbers game? Yeah, to a degree, but probably there's a bunch of efficiency stuff that you could do. Like we talk about this quite a lot, right? Where people are being pulled in lots of different directions. How do you optimize that? And then when you're looking at the tools themselves, what a radiologist, can do is kind of open the scan, zoom, and give a diagnosis, close the scan, your
Yeah.
problem is solved. None of the AI tools can kind of do that yet, right? You don't have a general AI tool. You might be like, hey, your lung nodule's bigger. So, okay, cool. I still need to finish the scan. I still
Yeah.
need to look at everything else. And so I think until you can really kind of address that, and I think that's where some of the tools are really good. I kind of like laughed about lung nodules, but I think actually those are really good tools. When I've used lung nodule tools, I like it. It's like super boring as a radiologist
Yeah.
to have to just compare like for like and measure. It's quite tedious. So I think in fact that is a really good, it's a good shout. But I think you have to, if the problem is speed, and I think it is speed more than accuracy, because radiologists are quite accurate.
Yeah.
So but a lot of the tools sell themselves for accuracy, right?
Yes.
And you're like, but accuracy is not a problem.
Yes.
I'm not saying radiologists are perfect, but they're pretty accurate.
Yeah.
No one's saying that, God, if you could just make them more accurate. You're like,
Yeah.
no, what you really need to do is improve output. So I think until you actually address that, it'll be difficult. And that's where I think a lot of the logistics stuff, which
Yeah.
is boring, can probably make a
bigger
a
impact
bigger
on it.
impact. Yeah.
Fine. Then we've got a question come through from one of the people online, and please feel free to feed them through, and I'll take them as they come up. When you started, and you had your sort of original vision with Hexarad, what's stayed intact and what's been completely rethought? Well, I think we know what stayed intact. Has anything been completely rethought?
Completely rethought. Yeah, I'm sure there has been. Perhaps probably a little bit more in terms of rethought.
What about like your understanding of hospitals and radiology departments?
It's kind of there actually
Really?
still.
Because I would have been surprised, like as registrars, that if you understood like how the money worked in the NHS, because that's one of the things that doctors know least about
Yeah.
is like how reimbursement
How
works.
reimbursement works. Yeah, because I did a master's.
Oh, fine,
I
in
did.
health economics, yeah.
Oh, no, it's a really good question. So, what's changed? We launched OptiRad. So the offering on our platform is different. So before we went in, just did teleradiology, but we then realised that there was something to be said about offering a more holistic solution to the problem.
Mm,
So we've added to that, and so I suppose it's been an expansion as opposed to something that we've removed.
yeah, fine. No, that makes a lot of sense. Um, so I want to not pick at, but go back to the point you made around safety versus, not safety, accuracy versus speed. Um, But surely there's like a minimum, there's a threshold, right? Around, because so we recently did some work at the beginning of the year looking at one of the things was the interaction between AI and radiologist and how automation bias can creep
Yes.
in
Yeah. Yeah.
to radiologists. And there was actually a very famous study looking at mammography reading. So the average sort of BIRAD score accuracy, even for very experienced radiologists, was I think almost halved when they were given the wrong answer by the AI.
Yeah.
So how do you balance this pressure for speed also with the need for patient safety?
Yeah. So you mean kind of like, is it how do you address
Like
automation bias?
how would you make those trade-offs? Like so because you're so like lung nodules, right? So you see potentially see the value of like lung nodule technology in say Hexarad teleradiology business. Um, like how would you go about making the like go no go decision with the technology? You've evaluated it and you're like, yes, it makes us 10% faster throughput.
Yeah.
But what about like, are we missing different cases? Because the interesting thing with AI is that even if you have, say your radiologist is 90% accurate and the AI is 90% accurate, it'll probably be accurate on a different 90%.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I think that's why Joe's speaking to you guys. It's a nice segue
Yeah,
into Newton Street.
yeah,
How do you do the compliance and the accuracy? If
yeah,
only there
yeah,
was a platform.
yeah. Well,
Um,
it's more around like decisions because I will give you the data and
yeah.
be like, Farzana, this is what the vendors look like.
Yeah.
Um, and it almost comes back to like sometimes I think about this is this a duty of candor conversation
Yeah.
where I'm like, hey, we're using AI and it's just as good as a radiologist, but it's also worse in other ways.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Because and you almost have this challenge sometimes with staff
Yeah. Yeah.
because staff are not fungible.
Yeah.
Like you'll have people like, oh, they're really great at this. The other person is great in different things.
Yeah. I think. I mean, I guess first of all to understand like how where is the problem impacting, right? So the example about accuracy, I think is really interesting is perhaps not even for this generation of radiologists, right? Because
Yeah,
there are things that if you detect automation bias,
yeah.
you could do certain things, even just alerting somebody, right? So we built an LLM that
Oh,
when it comes to kind of certain things that are in reports that give an alert, and we find that alerting in itself is really helpful to nudge behavior. But I think your point about accuracy becomes really interesting when we're like, if let's say the next generation of radiologists
mm,
only use AI tools, how will they then be able to look at the cases which are slightly more of the outliers?
Yeah.
Because that's where accuracy, the thing with radiology is for the cases where you are inaccurate, the consequences are very, very severe. I think that's where that becomes quite interesting, right? Like, how do you, um, it's the new chat GPT generation right now.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
you're seeing all, friends who are teachers are like, I can just see these essays. And you're like, how do you develop critical thinking in an era where you can just outsource that to AI? And I think that problem is relevant for radiology. I just wonder whether it's a little bit more relevant for like radiology in 10 years, because I think the current group, you can still nudge their behavior
Yeah.
and they still have the core skills because they trained at a time when they didn't have those tools.
The current consultants.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is actually like a live conversation that we're having with a few sort of clinical academics, but also some sites, which is the impact on new registrars.
Yeah.
Because, like, imagine if you're rotating through different departments or different hospitals, the first department you land in, it's got AI assistants
Yeah.
in, say, the chest X-ray reading, and you're like, oh, this is great. I'm so confident at reading chest X-rays. You rotate to another department, and you're like, oh my God, I've lost my crutch. Um, and that can like affect training outcomes. But even if you're not moving around like that, you can have this like atrophy of skills as well. One of the consultants at one of the hospitals that we work with, where they're using AI to triage certain cases to reporting radiographers,
Yeah.
commented that, hey, I don't actually see these cases anymore. And I'm like, oh, that's very interesting because to like torture an AI analogy, you're sort of training the training set
Yeah.
for that radiologist.
Yeah.
Because like I used to see the full spectrum of disease. Now I only see the really hard stuff. I don't see that many normal or plain stuff anymore.
Well, that happened to me when I went to a teaching hospital.
Okay.
So nothing to do with AI,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but when you become super specialist, I just forgot what normal scans looked like because all I would see all day were just, pathology.
Yeah.
And I would have to then remind myself what normal looked like because you'll then just call everything.
Yeah.
Because actually in certain cases, if you do specific rare diseases, then that can look the same on two different scans. And if that's all you see, so yeah.
So we've been thinking about different interventions. So there's educational stuff that we do. We do a YouTube series, so you can check that out. And we do other sort of training and education stuff. But there's also technological interventions you can make aside from monitoring. So, and some of this sounds kind of wacky, but I think it can become such a serious problem that I think it's worth thinking about. So things like turning off AI randomly. And we've seen this in other industries with like autopilot randomly turning off and pilots making sure that they're paying attention and engaged. How feasible do some of these things sound? Like, what would you like if going back to as a registrar and someone who cares about becoming the best possible consultant, but also not missing out on the benefits that AI gives? What do you think is a right way to use it responsibly in a radiology workflow like that?
I like the idea of turning it off. I guess there is a world though in which you're like, well, what is the point of turning it off? I guess what you're trying to do is detect automation bias. But perhaps there's just an acceptance that this new world of radiologists will will be different, and you don't good doesn't necessarily mean they're just like the old generation of radiologists.
Mm.
And perhaps, as you say, whether that's you could certainly turn things off. But I think the automation bias is an interesting one. But I think there's fairly good data. I think you've talked about this before, where you can counteract automation bias with just letting people know that they're
Yes.
drifting,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And that they are like likely to do that, and then people can then change their behavior accordingly. But when I was in medical school, that sounds so old. But we didn't have
Computers.
yeah, like we didn't have cars. We just had nothing. But no, we didn't have. I was that when I was a junior doctor, I used to carry around a book, like a
Okay.
little Oxford. There was an Oxford Handbook of Clinical Medicine.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I had to remember a lot of stuff because you didn't have like an app on your phone.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And this next generation of doctors don't need to do that. Would be ridiculous if they
Yeah.
walked around with a book,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I think about it now. You like,
Yeah.
like you're like opening the book, you've highlighted it
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it would be ridiculous now to say to like doctors like you've now got to do medicine without any of your tools. You
Yeah.
just got to make sure that they are still safe and that within this new paradigm of what medicine looks like today,
Yeah.
that they're practicing well and they know like what the gotchas are, right? And so maybe that's a more pragmatic way of like looking at it.
No, that makes a lot of sense. There's also like a slightly different, perhaps more extreme outcome. So one of the really exciting bits of news this year was Skin Analytics getting their Class 3 approval,
Wow.
which allowed for sort of relatively autonomous screening of skin lesions in the dermatology pathway. And there are radiology AI vendors who have similar aims. And I know that there are research projects that are underway in the UK to at least simulate or test if fully autonomous, in this instance, chest X-ray reporting, could help alleviate some of the pressures, particularly say in ED, where you have, failure in primary care leading to lots of normal people showing up in ED. What are your thoughts around autonomous AI taking away the radiologist almost completely, or at least the initial read completely?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think what I find really interesting is this idea of like liability and who's going to
Mm.
take the final burden, right? Um, I think I think the scope of radiologist practice could change though. I think that would be reasonable
Yeah,
in some instances. Um, I think the tech is moving really, really fast. So I think understanding the guardrails around that, having systems, something that can wide scale like do that so you can measure quality is really important. But on principle, I suppose we live in quite a bubble in the West, right? Because
yeah,
we're fundamentally in a system where there are actually like radiologists and doctors and access
yes,
to imaging.
yeah,
But
yeah,
when you like take a step back and you look at the rest of the world and you look at like ratios of radiologists in different parts of the world and what that means for patients, it would make sense that there are ways for patients to access imaging that takes advantage of technology. I don't think that then means that radiologists are out of a job. I think they have to then evolve because I think there is so much extra imaging to do. But I think it is also, you know, it's only looking at one very small part. If all you're worried about is protectionism, I think you just have to adapt and
yeah.
evolve.
Yeah, no, fine. That makes a lot of sense. It's really interesting about the evolution of radiology practice
Mm,
itself, um, because as someone watching from the sidelines, particularly in MRI, where I remember seeing in my initial training doing a lot of cardiac MRI, and I would sit with the radiographer and the cardiologist,
mm,
and I was like, why is there a cardiologist here?
mm,
Isn't there a radiologist? And then I just finished a national trial evaluating AI technology with 4 other sites. And I think 3 of the 4 PIs were emergency physicians,
mm.
not radiologists.
Yeah.
And so one thing that I've said to colleagues, particularly at the RCR, is like, there's this really interesting tipping point we're at with radiology as a profession,
Mm,
where you could be the sort of defining or AI leaders of the future. Like as medicine turns into an information science, who better to lead that than those who are specialists in the technology that was first to adopt AI
mm,
and are fundamentally, I think, a science-based practice compared
mm,
to some other fields. But if you look at the pattern of
mm,
what's happened with, say, cardiac imaging
mm.
and emergency imaging, that's not what radiologists have done. They've
What
sort of,
what do you think about?
I think it's kind of people who go into radiology, to be honest. Like if you
Do you think
like,
it's cool?
no, it's not that. It's just that if you prefer not to deal with patients all the time
Yeah.
and to sit in a dark
Mm,
room, you're probably not banging on the door to expand your scope. Whereas if you're an emergency physician, you probably think of yourself as a superhero, and you probably want to think, how do I get more agency and control
mm.
of what I'm dealing with? Um, that's my very naive instinct around just again seeing it from the sidelines. Does that ring true, or have I got it wrong?
There are elements of it that are true. I think I think from a kind of practical level, what often happens in health systems in the UK is radiologists are often not consulted in the pathway. So, for
Is
example,
that not because they're in a dark room hidden away?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
and I think there is something kind of
yeah.
with that, but often they are, yeah, they're not consulted. They are like the kind of impact. I think what I see from a hospital managerial level is often there is a misunderstanding of what radiologists do and what the impact of radiology is. on the rest of the pathway.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
this is a super great example. Hospitals happening everywhere, right, across the country at the moment. Someone is expanding a service and they forgot to tell radiology,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And then they're gonna, in 6 months, they're gonna be like, none of our scans are getting reported.
Yeah. Yeah.
That happens every time.
Yeah.
And so I think whilst I think sure, like radiologists definitely need to lean in,
Yeah.
and I think the next generation of radiologists are doing that,
Yeah.
and they are good generalists and they do understand how medicine works. I think there is also within kind of hospital management and decision making, there has to be an understanding of diagnostics itself
Yes.
and what diagnostics like, what it means, what the impact is. So I think it's kind of twofold. I think it's changing because I think
Yeah.
I speak to more and more hospital decision makers now. As you said before, they would, did you ever watch that episode of Scrubs where they have the one time they have a radiologist? And he's basically comes out, he's like crazy, and he goes like, my
Oh
machines,
yes.
as he
Yeah.
curses
Yeah.
them all,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And most,
Yeah.
most like most back in the
You mentioned at the beginning, well, you asked me about uh, failures that I face and fundraising and things like that. One thing that is well known is ethnic minority founders, female founders, have a much harder time
yeah.
raising capital, both in Europe and US, right? But not just focusing on fundraising, but just generally as a woman leading a medtech company. Have there been, do you think, unique challenges that you faced, and how have you managed to navigate them?
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, the data is still there. So I think, of course, like, lean in, do all of that stuff, but fundamentally it is harder. My one of my challenges that, I remember I had was we were speaking to the IC of one of our investors, and we had outperformed, and the head of the IC just spoke to my co-founder, didn't ask me any questions, even though they were all questions for me. So
Your co-founder, who is a,
I'm a white man.
yeah,
Um, and kept pointing back, right, and just saying that not question is not for me. So for sure, and I think it's really hard when it happens. I think it can really throw people off. And I know so many amazing female founders where they've had to really overcome that. So I don't know what the answer is.
how do you do it?
How do
Or,
what do I do?
as in, do you just like bulldoze through it, or
Yeah, I think I used to get really upset by it.
yeah,
So when that incident happened, I was really upset. But just had some really great supporters and mentors actually. Charles, who's the chairman of my board,
mm,
he has been like consistent um, advocate. Is always kind of has your back. Sachin, who's a super close friend of mine and is an investor, has always again like has had a lot of success, but is really good with advice. So I've had some great people who've supported. So I do think you need people, and my co-founders obviously, right?
yeah,
They're
yeah, yeah,
fantastic, but you do also need mentors and people that you can kind of lean on and you can call up and you can say this happened, it really sucks, and they say
yeah, yeah,
yeah, it really does suck, and sometimes they can hold people accountable for you,
yeah,
as my chairman did, which was great. Um, but I think it is really hard. I think it's just unfortunately you either have to accept it and carry on with the idea that you will change and you will have the path,
yes,
you'll help other people who
yeah,
are
yeah, yeah,
having that path. But yeah, I think it just really sucks, and
yeah,
I really like, and I don't, there is no kind of like magic answer, it still really sucks.
yeah,
But one good thing when you're underestimated is you sometimes that does give you an advantage
yeah.
to
Element
win.
of surprise.
An element of surprise. People
Yeah,
share things with you that they
yeah,
didn't.
yeah,
They
yeah,
see you as
yeah.
like zero risk
Yes, yeah,
whatsoever.
yeah, yeah.
So sometimes like that helps. But yeah, I think it's really hard.
So we're recording this at Hell House, and they've got an event in
Mm.
about half an hour around health equity in sort of health tech and things like that. And over
Did you interestingly,
here, go on,
as a brown
brown man.
man, do you think you have disadvantages, or actually do you think in tech you're all right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a it's a very nuanced thing. I mean, in some ways, and in some ways it's not. It's very blunt. Um, like I even notice very subtle things. Like people, just my name. A lot of people don't realize it's an Arab name. They assume it's German, and so by email I get different treatment.
Interesting.
Like, and people will often misspell my name with like two R's
Yeah.
as a English Harris,
Yeah.
and then Schwab as SCH as like a German Schwab.
Yes. See.
And then I show up and they're like, oh, it's a brown bearded man. Whoops. And there's other thing. And like, obviously, like I'm British born and I have an English accent. And I know other colleagues who don't have an English accent and I see them get treated differently, or they have a name that can't be mistaken for like a Anglo-Saxon name or something else. And so there's like shades of gray around it. But the thing that, um, and like you say, like, sometimes when you experience it, one of the challenges sometimes is you're never sure, like, is it because I am terrible or is it something that I can't control? Um, and then but the defense to it is just to be so exceedingly good that it doesn't make a difference ultimately, because there will be detractors and opposition and barriers for all sorts of reasons. Um, and my attitude historically has been is just to be so good that it's undeniable, and you see that happen at the absolute pinnacle of industry, right? Or sports is the best example. You have people like Muhammad Ali and other sort of like amazing personalities who are the best at their sport, who still face those barriers, and so you sort of, well, rightly or wrongly, you accept it as an inevitability and you just carry on.
Yeah.
Um,
I think that's what, so I think that's when you'll see like that's what I think. I think when I see a woman who is in like a kind of amazing position, I
yeah,
always will know that she's been amazing.
yeah.
So I think equity will be when I see like a super average woman on board.
Yeah.
That's when I'm going to know when they
Yeah,
haven't been in the
yeah,
papers, a bit
yeah.
disorganized,
Yeah, and they get a promotion.
and they get promotion.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
when you know
yeah.
actually
But and
she's right.
the thing that actually has helped in my career, and it's a bit when you were talking about sort of mentors and advisors, is particularly when I was very early in my career in the NHS, is I had people who were men or white men or whatever, and they were like, ah, he knows what he's talking about. Let me grab him and give him a position, an audience that he otherwise wouldn't have. So, and I call that sort of sponsorship. And I had a lot of very senior people, particularly at GSTT, who gave me a very long leash, to be frank. Like when I was a random Band 7 physicist, I presented the Trust Executive Committee around AI governance and what it should be done. And the only reason was because my clinical director, Bernadette Cronin, who's a lovely white lady who's retired now, was like, Harris knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
And I'm going to put him on the agenda for the Trust Exec Committee. And I don't, in the near term, I don't think you can get away from needing that kind of sponsorship. Aside from that, look, and what I wanted to ask was, is there anything missing from the conversation in about women in leadership in health and care, or health and tech rather?
Well, the data shows that women actually do often make better returns for investors.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So I do think that's missing. I
Yeah,
think,
yeah, yeah.
the funds are investing other people's money and they should do the job to make as much money for their investors and their LPs as possible. And the data demonstrates that. So, do your job.
Yeah. We're fast running out of time.
Yeah.
I'm just going to ask you a couple of quick fire questions. What's one thing you believe about AI in healthcare that most people in the industry would disagree with?
It's a good thing.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. If you could change one way about the way AI is being pitched or sold into healthcare, what would it be?
Think of the logistics and operations. That is what makes an impact in healthcare.
Okay, great. And then finally, like looking ahead, sort of in 10 years' time, um, how do you think radiology might be transformed by AI?
I think more joined up working, better output, higher accuracy.
Yeah.
Mm.
Fantastic. There's a whole bunch of questions that I didn't manage to get to, but thank you so much, Farzana, for your time. It's been a great conversation. I could have gone on for at least another half an hour. And thank you guys for listening. Until next time.